What is the strangest mystery that is still unsolved? The Hinterkaifeck murders. Super creepy, and the fact that there was evidence the murderers were in the house watching the family for a while before killing them just totally freaks me out. Are you familiar with the book, The Man from the Train? The writers think that it was a serial killer, German guy, that killed a bunch of families in the United States before going back to Germany. The Salish Sea Feet, or the Mad Axeman of New Orleans. The Salish Sea Feet are the approximately 20 dismembered feet found in or around British Columbia or Washington, USA. The feet sometimes are found still inside of shoes. No one knows how they got there or where they came from. Over the course of the last 13 years, the authorities have ruled out foul play. The Mad Axeman of New Orleans ran rampant in 1918 and 1919. He murdered 6 people, usually those of Italian descent, with axes or straight razors. In March of 1919, he sent a lengthy letter from hottest hell that was pretty nonsensical. But the most relevant paragraphs read, "Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time on next Tuesday night, I am going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it out on that specific Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe." There were no murders that night because every dance hall in NOLA was filled to capacity. The Overtuned Bridge. It's a bridge in Scotland where dogs always unexplainably jump off. It's very strange and nobody knows why they do this. Dogs who survived reportedly walked back up and jumped off again. They even had to put up a warning sign to keep your dog on a leash and to watch them. A dog psychologist says maybe it's because of certain scents or animals down below. But most people have disagreed this theory. It's fucking weird. I remember that a new theory, which is supported by most experts, has something to do with the bridge's shape and resonant frequency creating sounds only audible to dogs. These sounds mess with the dog's perception and can drive them a bit mad. The whereabouts of the last Gestapo chief Heinrich Muller. The last verified sighting of him was in Berlin roughly 3 days before it fell. He had stated he knew full well what the Russians did to prisoners and he had no intentions of being captured. As chief of the Gestapo, he more than likely had access to foreign documents as well as ways to replicate them. Both the CIA and the KGB spent time looking for him, but no trace has ever been found. The suicide of Ellen Greenberg. 27 stab wounds in different areas of the body. Suicide stabbings are so ridiculous. There's a case from Denmark in 2003 where a woman was found dead by her husband, who called the police and said she had killed herself. She was on the bedroom floor next to a broken lamp. Her wristwatch was torn off and her panties pulled down. And she had 179 stab wounds. Because it was a Sunday, they had to call in a criminal assistant on his off day. And he deemed it a suicide. Because she had a history of depression. Flight 19 of December 5, 1945. 5 bomber craft on a routine training run became lost while heading back and eventually disappeared entirely. Audio has them saying that they thought they had ended up over the Florida Keys. But wind could not have allowed that. Even more interesting is the fact the rescue craft dispatched to locate them also disappeared. The 1987 Arkansas murders of Don Henry and Kevin Ives. And every single possible witness surrounding them. Like Keith McCaskill, who claimed to be on the tracks that night. He talked to the special prosecutor about what he saw. Then realized the prosecutor was dirty. After coming forth as a witness, he began saying goodbye to his loved ones and planned his own funeral arrangements. Shortly after, he was stabbed 113 times. Asha Degree. Girl leaves her house in the middle of the night during a storm and disappeared. The only problem is that she was terrified of thunder and lightning and had no motive for leaving because her home life was fine. Then her clothes and backpack were found a year later in an abandoned construction site. The identity of and what happened to D. B. Cooper. A man on a plane called himself D. B. Cooper and claimed to have a bomb-in-use suitcase. He took the flight crew hostage, and when he got the money he asked for, he had the flight crew start flying again. Eventually he jumped out of the plane with a couple of parachutes and the money. No one knows where he went or if he even survived. Who was Perseus, from 1943 to 1946? The Soviet Union had a high-level spy in the Manhattan Project. Codenamed Perseus, this spy was a scientist at the White Sands Missile Testing Site in NM. And the main research facilities in Los Alamos. Perseus saw pretty much the entire project start to finish, giving the Russians everything they needed to get to work on their own bomb. The fact that they were able to do so within 4 years of the end of World War II, when their nations was still devastated, is proof positive that Perseus helped a great deal. And to top it all off, Perseus was never caught or positively identified. The Winchester Mystery House. I watched a documentary on this house when I was 10 and it has stuck with me ever since. It's about a woman named Sarah Winchester. Her husband and baby both died. Her husband owned a rifle company, and she went to a psychic. The psychic told her that she is being haunted by the ghosts of all the people who have died by the hands of those guns. And that is the reason for the tragedy that happened in her life. To appease the spirits, the psychic told her to build a great house for them, and she was not allowed to stop building or tragedy will strike again. She didn't get help from anyone. But she did it and kept building for the next 38 years. There are stairs that lead to nowhere. Windows that don't look out. Hallways that wrapped around. It has 161 rooms and it's huge. Was it really the ghosts? Was she insane? I have no idea, but it's the most interesting story I've ever heard. I honestly think it's just some rich lady who was traumatized by the death of her loved ones. And did everything she could to stop it from happening again. No mystery, just a fascinating story on how our brains work. The Lady of the Dunes. No one knows who she is. It's a pretty crazy story. Stephen King's son Joe Hill made a theory that she was an extra in the movie Jaws, since a woman in the background of the movie looks very similar to her and can be seen in the same clothes the Lady of the Dunes. It makes a lot of sense but doesn't really explain who killed her or anything. The Conch Pass in Ladakh. This region lies in the disputed border of India and China, and is truly the most inaccessible places in the world. In 1962, the armies of both the countries were engaged in a severe conflict. After this, both China and India entered into an agreement according to which none will be allowed to patrol the region, but can keep an eye on it from a distance. After this, a popular belief floated that the Conch Pass in Ladakh is a hideous base of UFOs. The area has forever remained a no-man's land due to its territorial limits and is the reason why the UFOs have chosen it as their operational base. Reportedly, many have seen these UFOs and both the Indian and Chinese governments are aware of these developments. In 2006, Google Maps too baffled the world with some images that looked like military facilities. But till date the whole issue remains mysterious and unexplainable. The true author of My Immortal, a horrible fan fiction that has a cult following. The more you dive into it, the weirder and deeper the mystery gets. Interconnected webs, false flags, all kinda stuff. I don't think the real author can ever be revealed, there have been too many false flags already. And the story itself is a decade old. If I remember correctly, the author's fanfic net account doesn't exist anymore. And the email account it was created with got deleted or something. That and the false flags would make it impossible to prove the authenticity of the author, even if they decided to come forward. Personally, I think it was satire. But I do really like the thought of some normal, 25-year-old woman living amongst us, cringing every once in a while at the memory of her fanfic past. Why people keep pouring money into a hole in the ground on Oak Island. If you ask me, greater than tilde less than. The show is the treasure. They rake in that sweet advertising money while not actually doing much more than recap past events and share about 15 minutes of new content. We still have no definitive proof of who this Socrates guy is. On one hand, He's mentioned constantly by philosophers from his time, often used as an example character, and several works are attributed to his name. On the other hand, we have countless legal records and censuses that confirm the existence of Aristotle and Plato but none that link back to Socrates. He's either a very prolific philosopher, or an in-joke that classical philosophers would reference when they didn't know who to attribute quotes to. In 1977 we received a radio signal from outer space that lasted about 72 seconds. To this day, we still do not know where it originated from. The wow signal. No, what's crazy is that the signal lasted 72 seconds because we only had the recording capabilities for 72 seconds. It went on longer. Another one is Colonel Phillips' death, greater than, on April 16, 2003. 54-year-old Colonel Phillips left his Texas home and headed to work. 2 hours later, he was found dead in his car, an apparent victim of a car crash. The car was caved in on the driver's side and Phillips suffered major head trauma as a result. He was killed instantly. This is where it gets weird. Greater than, Philip had a tear in his t-shirt under his fatigues. There, they could see a 6-inch vertical gash in his chest. Above the entrance to the 6 inches gash were at least 5 scratch marks, which the autopsy report said were consistent with hesitant marks. Both his nipples had been removed with surgical precision. The 5th digit on his left hand had been amputated and his left ear had been lacerated down to the bone. Duct tape was dangling from both of his wrists and the top of his boots. It was ruled a suicide. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and hit the notification button. See you next time.